I'd like to bring the meeting of the Pittsburgh City Commission to order. Please join me in a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to open the meeting with public input. I see we have someone perhaps to lead us in prayer.
Good evening. May we pray. Almighty God, we ask your blessings upon this commission group, and we ask your blessings upon our city leaders, our administrators, and all workers. Bless this evening to be an evening of peace and time of harmony, that we can continue working together for the betterment of our city and for the citizens of this great city of Pittsburgh. Father, we want to also give thanks for those who have served and will be leaving, and those who will be coming in, taking their new office, that we ask your blessings upon them and as they serve. Watch over us and guide us. We ask these things in thy holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Mark.
Anyone else like to speak before the commission? We'd like your name and city, please.
Good evening. My name is Allie Smith, and I am a citizen of Pittsburgh, Kansas. I've lived here for 9 years. I came here about 9 years ago to start my bachelor's degree at Pittsburgh State University and followed with my master's, and I've decided to stay here and make Pittsburgh my home. About a year ago, I founded a social community of support and a not-for-profit in Pittsburgh called Q-Space. The mission of Q-Space is to create a safe and welcoming environment for LGBTQ people, facilitate community activism, and educate community members about gender, romantic, and sexuality minorities. Through this endeavor, I have been able to connect with other incredible people in our community who make it the beautiful, diverse, growing area of Southeast Kansas that it is. Through our community discussions and education, we have realized that the city of Pittsburgh does not have a non-discrimination ordinance for any class. And the residents of the city of Pittsburgh deserve the right to be free from discrimination because of that individual's age, race, religion, color, sex, sexual orientation, national origin or ancestry, gender identity, disability, military status, genetic information, marital status, or familiar status. And our petition states that this right should include, but not be limited to, any of the following: the right to pursue and hold employment and the benefits associated therewith without wrongful discrimination, the right to the full enjoyment of any of the services, advantages, or privileges of any place of public accommodation without wrongful discrimination, the right to engage in property transactions, including obtaining housing for rent or sale and credit thereof, therefore, without wrongful discrimination, and the right to exercise any right granted under the ordinance without retaliation. I'm presenting this petition to the City Commission, in which we started last Wednesday and have over 370 signatures. There are also many supporters here tonight. If you are here to support the anti-discrimination ordinance, if you could stand or raise your hand. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Have you or any of your group have experienced this discrimination in Pittsburgh?
Yes. Yes, sir.
So now I got a question for you, Henry. You said we didn't have an ordinance. I think is that what you said?
That's correct.
Well, we do have an ordinance, and I got this from Tammy Nagel. It's ordinance numbered G 671, and it took effect. This is how up to date it is. August 16th, 1991, and there is discrimination areas on this ordinance, but it didn't include you guys. So I want, if we can, maybe look at adding this to the ordinance we already have, so it would include you guys. what the rest of the commission think of that.
I'd like to talk about it a little bit more under non-agenda items, if that's okay.
Okay, fine.
Because we have other guests here, so.
Sure.
Yeah, but I do want
Yes,
to visit
yes.
about it, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ally. Anyone else like to speak before us?
Cheryl Brooks, 1533 Hampton Road. I'm speaking in regard to the late addition to the agenda of the executive session meeting for the discussion of the evaluation of the city manager. My understanding is this usually takes place the first meeting of December. It is important for the governing body to be responsible in taking time and consideration of this particular personnel matter. This should not be done in haste due to an election cycle. In politics, it has been said that elections have consequences. It is appropriate for those of us who have just been elected to take part in this discussion of the city manager's leadership position. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak before us?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Elisha Seals. I am a resident here in Pittsburgh, Kansas. I love this city. If you know me, you know that I love this city. I live here by choice. I moved here. I'm a homeowner. I work here. I frequent local businesses, mainly coffee shops, and I am active in our community. I serve on multiple boards and play a role in the vision of our city and have played a role also in Imagine Pittsburgh 2030. The direction of our city is forward. We have excitement downtown. We have businesses opening. We have thriving and growing companies who are trying to recruit people to come here. When you look for a new job, you look at a company's values. When you look for a new home, you research the neighborhood. And when you want to move to a new city, you take a look at their culture. If you are in a class that is not federally or state protected, you are searching for an NDO. Tonight, I stand here as a white, educated female who will receive very little, if any, retaliation for speaking on this matter tonight. Some of the members of our community do not have that privilege, and many did not join us this evening in fear. You ask if we have faced this. We have. You may be wondering if this protection is necessary. I'd like to give you an example of why it is. This morning, a local news station posted something to talk about, inquiring about what we're bringing to you tonight. Most of the comments were appalling. Some of them were in support and were appreciated. Some were in ignorance, and we see that. Many were in hate and very difficult to read. If you wonder, if you wonder why fear might be present, take a look at that post and see the hate and the comments against people that I love, people that deserve to not feel fear living in a community that they love. There's a saying in education, but everywhere, that you don't need policy until you needed policy. I'd like to see Pittsburgh get ahead. I'd like to see it protect and support its already very diverse community. And I'd like to move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you for coming up and talking.
Anyone else like to speak before us? Seeing none, I close public input.
We got one more, Patrick.
Oh. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Angelia Childers, and I'm 18 years old. I am a part of the LGBTQ community. I'm speaking here today on behalf of the youth of Pittsburgh, Kansas. We are the next generation of citizens, and as such, we should not have to fear rejection, harassment, or discrimination of any kind because of who we are or the way we choose to live. In no way can we predict future situations that will affect our citizens. However, by enacting this ordinance, we can protect future generations that may have greater percentages of minorities. The youth are expected to work, to live, and to prosper within the community, and to utilize the businesses and public works that stimulate the city's economy. We are not able to fulfill these roles if citizens and certain minorities are preyed upon and harassed. By enacting this ordinance, we will be setting an example for other cities. We will be the ones to educate, enlighten, and raise each other up instead of pushing us down. By enacting this ordinance, Pittsburgh, Kansas will have evolved from a place of intolerance to a place of love and acceptance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to come before us?
Hello, my name is Amber Hames. I am currently a Pittsburgh resident, and I'm pursuing my master's degree in human resource development from Pittsburgh State University. I am addressing you today on behalf of the non-discrimination ordinance that Allie has already set forth. In my time here, I have come to see Pittsburgh as my home, and I would like it to make it my permanent home, and I feel like a lot of students feel the same way. So, you know, realistically, graduates, once they graduate from Pitt State, are going to look towards the communities where they can find employment and they can find housing to make that place their permanent home. I do feel like there seems to be a general misunderstanding about what discrimination is. So it all comes down to whether the criteria that you're using is a legitimate criteria. So if you choose not to hire someone because they are unfit for a position, so they don't have the education that it is required to actually fill that position, then you are using legitimate criteria. If you choose not to rent to someone because they are an unfit tenant, they don't have, you know, the credit score that you deem, you know, fit, or they have a history of, you know, trashing the properties that they go and stay at, they're not a fit tenant. That is legitimate criteria. So what we are really asking is that people don't have criteria or use criteria that is based in bias, that is based on bigotry, that you use legitimate criteria when making housing or employment decisions. So according to research from the UCLA, actually 30% of LGBT adults in Kansas make $24,000 a year or less. And that is comparison to 18% of non-LGBT adults. So I think we can all agree that once someone graduates from college, they're not just looking to survive within their community, they're actually looking to thrive. So if we are wanting to really attract individuals who are graduating, then I feel like minorities are going to look towards communities that have comprehensive non-discrimination ordinances that actually cover everyone and not just a select few. Additionally, 2006 national poll found that 89% of LGBT individuals and 72% of non-LGBT individuals reported that when deciding where to work, they do look at the NDOs that cities have. So they are looking at that, whether or not it actually affects them. They are looking at the culture. They're looking at what that city has to offer them as an individual. So I think we can agree that basing an employment or renting decision based on like your age or your sex or your race, like that's not right. And we have laws already to reflect that. But currently we don't have laws to protect other individuals that we would be protecting under the ordinance that we are petitioning for. So definitely I have seen our community and our city grow so much within the last few years. I have seen so much just in Block 22, the increase in businesses that we've had, the increase in events, and I feel like the next natural step is going to be for us to have a more comprehensive non-discrimination ordinance. Like, I feel like that is really going to be a natural next step to encourage people to continue to want to work here and want to live here.
Thank you.
All right? Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak before us? Seeing none, I'll close the public input again. We have a couple of proclamations. Then Collier, if you could step forward. I think that exits. Okay, Office of the Mayor, City of Pittsburgh, Kansas, proclamation. Whereas more than 1 million people with disabilities have entered the labor force since the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990. And whereas as taxpayers, consumers, and workers, people with disabilities are contributing to our society and to their own fulfillment of the American dream. And whereas new generations of young people with disabilities are growing up in Pittsburgh, graduating from high school, going to college, and preparing to participate in the workplace. And whereas both students and job seekers with disabilities have the right to maximize their potential by making the most of their intellect, talents, and abilities in an environment free of physical, programmatic, attitudinal barriers. And whereas Disability Mentoring Day provides an opportunity for students and job seekers with all types of disability to gain insight into career options by spending part of their day in the workplace shadowing an employee as he or she goes through a normal day on the job. Now therefore I, Patrick J. O'Brien, Mayor of the City of Pittsburgh, Kansas, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, November the 20th, 2019 as Disability Mentoring Day in Pittsburgh, and encourage all citizens to recognize the enormous potential of people with disabilities and to work towards their full integration into the workplace. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of my community, I would like to thank the City of Pittsburgh for recognizing this day. Not all communities recognize Disability Mentoring Day. We use this as a preventative tool to help our students gain skill and knowledge so that they will be more successful in the employment community or going on to colleges, trade schools. If they are more successful with a career or education, they're less likely to have to access some of the social services, Westinghouse Catholic Charities, Salvation Army, CCAP, who I work for currently. Some of these agencies that are there, and so we are very glad that we were able to put this day together. We're being supported by a number of businesses, some of the largest employers in Southeast Kansas, service providers, and so we're looking forward to a very good day. And thank you very much for recognizing us.
Thank you for doing the work. Appreciate it. Okay, now we have a proclamation for Project Warmth. You get the spot? Okay. Office of the Mayor, City of Pittsburgh, Kansas proclamation. Whereas Project Warmth is a community effort that has been in existence for over 30 years, and whereas on Thursday, November the 14th, 2019, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 4:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m., citizens may visit the lower level of the Memorial Auditorium and Convention Center and enjoy a bowl of chili or soup and a slice of homemade pie to support this worthy cause. And whereas reaching the annual goal would not be possible without the generous support of local businesses who donate their time and products to make this event successful. And whereas we ask our communities to support this effort and assist our neighbors in Crawford County with utility payments during the winter months. Now therefore I, Patrick J. O'Brien, Mayor of the City of Pittsburgh, Kansas, do hereby proclaim Thursday, November the 14th, 2019 as Project Warmth Day in Pittsburgh, and urge all citizens to attend this important fundraiser to help our fellow citizens. Thank you.
We're counting this as the 32nd annual Project Warmth, and I've not been here for all 32, but was pleased to join in for a number of them now. And pleased to join in with the citizens and congregations, organizations, and businesses in Pittsburgh and in Crawford County to provide this, these means to help people who are having difficulty in paying their utilities. And so I'm just really glad to be a part of that. And you want to say more? Or?
If you eat chili and you get real hot, the fire department's going to furnish roll-layers for you.
So again, Thursday the 14th, Lunch will be served from 11 until 2, and from 4:30 to 5:30 will be for dinner carry out only. So thank you.
Please come.
Moving on to the consent agenda, is there anything anyone wants removed? Hearing none, I look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
It's been moved and seconded, roll call vote.
Chenoweth? Aye. McNally?
Aye.
McNay?
Aye.
Munsell?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye. Special presentation, Imagine Pittsburgh 2030 update. An update will be provided regarding the Imagine Pittsburgh 2030 initiative.
Good evening, Joe Delasega, 2106 Countryside Drive. It's my privilege to come before you and give you a little bit of an update on IP 2030. As you are aware, when we talked in the spring, there was a lot of discussion about IP 2030, what it was, and how do we get all groups engaged. And through that process, and you saw an opportunity to see all of the work that had been done to advance a lot of the focus areas of IP 2030, but it also became obvious that IP 2030 isn't a strategic plan that's like you would have in an organization or a business where there are set goals and strategies all the way down to implementation and tactics. IP 2030 was something that was initiated by the Chamber of Commerce back in 2012 when there were a lot of different people. The foundation was really solid. Many people who sat in chairs where you sat, and some were there, had gotten the city to a point where we were able to dream again, and there were a lot of great ideas. And so the chamber stepped forward, raised $100,000 to do the strategic planning process, and thank heavens they did. It was updated 5 years later, 2017, but when the updating came out, it was obvious that this plan was more vision, and it gave us focus areas, unlike the plan in our businesses where it gave us very specific items. So in going through that process with you all, if you recall, one of the big directives that you all came up with was the need to do a better job of communicating to the public and engaging them in the conversation. And so as a result of that, since we last met, we started with our board summit in August, where we invited, I think there were 15 organizations, the mostly nonprofits, and some of our active organizations that had boards, and we asked them to come to the board summit. Some of you were able to attend that, and that was a great event where we had people get up, and 4 particular people who, some had left, some had never left, but talked about Pittsburgh and why they choose to call Pittsburgh home. But from that conversation led to an open house in October. We had 115 in August. In October, we had 110 people show up. And there we kind of broke open the 6 focus areas. And at that time, we also were able to find people that stepped up that would, in effect, steward each one of those 6 focus areas. And these people's approach was, we can help facilitate the conversation about that focus area. And so citizens had an opportunity to come and to sit with each one of those people and to learn a little bit more about what that focus area meant, what things had been done, but more importantly, to provide ideas and input on what they'd like to see. We had one person at that event that, longtime citizen, said, I've never been invited into this conversation like I had this evening. So when we got together after that October meeting, we said, how can we keep this going so that citizens would have an opportunity every couple months to be able to show up somewhere and to have people, city leaders, officials, people who are working on these types of items for our city, and have what we call a community conversation. So when I say this plan is different than a plan with set goals and parameters, it's more providing 6 areas that we as a community identified several years ago that we need to stay focused on. And those needs are going to change. They're going to be dynamic as we continue to grow and have progress. So I would just like to thank you all for challenging us to do a better job maybe of opening up that conversation. We're going to start December 5th, will be our first official community conversation after the open house. At Block 22, we'll use social media, the newspaper and the media and the television to try to get the word out so that whoever wants to attend can attend. And again, we'll continue to have that conversation. In closing, I had the great privilege of being involved with Leadership Kansas this year. And we visited over a 6-month period 10 different communities, but we had 40 people that were in that class from communities all across the state. They did come to Pittsburgh for 3 days. And one of the evenings we sat around, we talked, and we just kind of played it. If I didn't live where I live, where would I live? Where would I want to be? The number of people who said Pittsburgh, Kansas would have made you very proud. They recognize there's something happening here. They see the progress, they see the culture, and they feel the vibe. So it was a very proud moment. I'd like to share that with you. So IP 2030 it's just that, 2030, but it's to be a tool for you all to continue to be able to, as you manage the affairs of the city, and then to be able to get citizens engaged. Each one of those focus areas ultimately is about us as citizens in our businesses or in our organizations, some in our churches, in our schools, and sometimes even in our own neighborhoods. It's what thing can I do to contribute to that focus area to advance Pittsburgh in a positive way. So that's it.
Thank you, Joe. We appreciate your bringing us up to date and all the work you do on this project.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Consider the following: disposition of bids, demolition of Mike's new and used. Consider staff recommendation to award the demolition of the structure at 716 North Broadway to the lowest bidder, JRB Industries of Parsons, with a total bid of $38,500. Yes?
This structure has, we've tried to find anyone that could come in, take over this, try and rehab it and use. This had been before the commission back last year in April of '24 about looking at potential demolition of this. The housing department has reached out to several folks who had interest, and all of them have had to turn away because there's just no way to be able to save that building economically. So what you're looking for is a price to award the demolition of that structure.
And this money is coming from?
The RLF funds, as was determined on that April 24th of 18 meeting.
Okay. Any questions or concerns, comments? Hearing none, I look for a motion to approve. I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Item B, plat 1000, block of East 10th Street. Consider the recommendation of the Planning Commission Board of Zoning Appeals to approve the short form plat submitted by Rod Zinn of Cornerstone Regional Surveying, LLC, for the replatting of a lot located in the 1000 block of East 10th Street. Yes, sir.
This was a requested short form plat. They're taking, see here on 10th Street, I don't know if you can see where that arrow is there. Mm-hmm. That lot there, that majority of that consists of an abandoned railroad right-of-way. That's why it had not been originally built upon in the past. What they're looking at doing with this is splitting that lot into 3 lots and building duplexes there. It is zoned R2 for duplexes.
That's terrific. Any questions or concerns? If none, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
So, go ahead, Dan.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Ordinance number G 1300. Consider adopting ordinance number G 1300, creating Article 8 in Chapter 42 of the Pittsburgh City Code to regulate the use of dockless vehicles within the city limits of the city of Pittsburgh, Kansas, and providing for regulation of permits, fees, and penalties for violations thereof.
Yes, sir. Okay, so we presented all this, of course, before. So at the last, well, 2 commission meetings ago, you'd asked for a survey. We went out, got it, collected the responses, collected the results, and that was distributed to you last week. So just a brief run through. There were 229 responses. Ran for a period of 1 week. Advertised through social media. There were about 40% of students, about 40% of the respondents were students, about 60% were not students, 85% were Pittsburgh residents, 15% were not. And what I found interesting really was the last one, which was a comparison between those who said they would want scooters in Pittsburgh and those who wouldn't. Just kind of interesting to see the breakdown of how, why people think that. So, and the demographics of the people that do think that. So, if there's any questions about the survey, I can answer them now.
I don't have any questions.
What is your interpretation of the data, James, overall?
I mean, overall, I think people want the scooters. You see that with the response of question 8, which is, do you want scooters in Pittsburgh? Every breakdown, so even the breakdowns that aren't displayed here, all of them had a stronger leaning towards having scooters in Pittsburgh. Even, I think the lowest I saw, the closest I saw was, there was a breakdown of like 46% people wanted it in the city, and then it's still like 33% said they didn't, so.
What I found interesting about the results, I mean, maybe having to do with the large number of PSU students, was the question where we asked, where would you ride the scooter, was almost all centered around the university or downtown. Nobody said they were riding it to Walmart or out on Langdon Lane or anything. So.
And that could be a result of, too, just the speed limit on Broadway, 40 miles an hour at Walmart, but, yeah, so.
Any other questions or concerns?
Should we move forward on this? First of all, I think what's important to me is that the authority permit expires after 1 year, so we will have an opportunity to evaluate the process and the program. The other thing, if we move forward, is I would like to see at least 30 days before a pretty aggressive education campaign, whether we work through active transportation or just within the city, just so people are aware it's coming.
And Veil Ride, the company that has expressed interest, has an educational campaign component as part of its deployment strategy.
I would also want to be in control of our own campaign too, so, yeah.
I have a few questions on these. There's a section in there that bicycles and motor-assisted scooters may not be ridden on all sidewalks on North Broadway between the intersection of First Street and the intersection of 11th Street. Last commission meeting, Commissioner Chenoweth requested during an upcoming meeting discussion to be held concerning banning the use of non-medical motorized vehicles. So are you still in favor of banning all non-medical emergency motorized vehicles from all sidewalks in the city?
I'm certainly in favor of doing it for these scooters. I did talk a little bit with Henry, who pointed out that there are some problems with the definitions that the state has, and he could explain that better than I could.
The definition of a dockless vehicle under this ordinance is a bicycle, an electric bicycle, or an electric motorized assisted scooter that can be locked and unlocked remotely. So that's the key, is if these vehicles can be locked and unlocked remotely. And that would only be, this ordinance would only govern those particular vehicles that the proprietors of these businesses would have to come to the city and get a license. It wouldn't you know, your normal homeowner who has a scooter or a bicycle or anything of that nature. It's just these particular type of vehicles that can be locked and unlocked remotely.
So it's commercial use, I mean.
That's correct, yeah.
And I'm fine with that, as per my request.
I have another question. It says they may be parked in a manner that would not impede normal and reasonable pedestrian access to a sidewalk. And the sidewalks of less than 48 inches. What is the normal width of a sidewalk in the city of Pittsburgh?
It varies dramatically, but the standard width is 4 feet.
That's 48 inches.
Considered it.
So to park one, you couldn't even park it on the sidewalk. How could you write, oh, and we're talking about, oh, I just listened to what that was said. So they wouldn't be allowed, this contractor, to use these electric scooters on sidewalks anywhere in the city, even if it's a 48-inch wide sidewalk.
I don't think this ordinance would prohibit that. They
It
just
would
can't-
not prohibit that?
It's just downtown.
They
Just
wouldn't be able to
downtown.
park them, leave them.
But if you park them on and not, would impede pedestrian traffic on a 48-inch sidewalk, if that would impede traffic, well, wouldn't riding one on a sidewalk at 48 inches impede pedestrian traffic?
I can't imagine why it would. I mean, 2 or 3 people can usually pass on a sidewalk. And I think these vehicles are much safer on the sidewalks than going down the street. I understand the banning of them from the downtown streets, but on most of these sidewalks, you don't, I mean, how often do you see 2 or 3 people walking down the sidewalk unless it's on one of the 10-foot trails? I mean, I think it's a, I hate to put it this way, but a non-issue.
Well, if that's the case, then why would we ban them from parking them on a 48-inch sidewalk? If it's all right to ride them on a 48-inch sidewalk, why would you ban parking them on?
Well, because when you park them, I mean, if you've seen some of the pictures of these, they're generally parked in a group. And they're trying to keep them from doing that. But riding a single vehicle down a street sidewalk is totally different than parking it there. I mean,
What if you ride in a group down the sidewalk?
Well, I mean, the what-ifs could go on forever.
Exactly, and that's my point.
Well, I think the point is these dockless vehicles seem to be prevalent in a lot of cities. I think you could beat this horse to death. We've already spent 4 city commission meetings talking about it. And if you pick up the newspaper, you'll see that there's generally an article about one city or another that has okayed it or adjusted their requirements. And I think the fact that Don brought up this year's lease or this year's commitment to the city, that gives us a chance to review it at that point in time. And at that point in time, after we really know what's transpiring, then if we need to revisit this issue, then we can.
Well, I agree with you. You probably can find any number of newspaper articles in favor of this. Also, you can find any number of newspaper articles banning these. I'm not against the scooters. I think they ought to be on the street. But, following up on Don's point, why don't we allow them, and just my thoughts, allow them on the college campus between Carlton and Ford, Rouse, and Broadway. That way we can monitor them for a year to see how they, in an area, see how they go. And maybe after the year, if everything works out fine and there's no problem, we can open maybe more parts of the city up to these scooters.
I don't think that just on the university is gonna give us a good indication. It's a pretty confined space. I think the challenges or the opportunities for it to fail are gonna be when the scooters are used coming from the university to downtown and back, so.
Or going to the mall.
I think it'll be like the bikes, kind of, it'll be successful because it's all, it's all contained and it's not really, they're not really going far, so.
Could at any time over, like if something comes up, so just say that we pass this or something, an ordinance, if there becomes an issue, could the governing body at any point change the ordinance, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, that's what's important to me, is that we start off and we have something to begin with, and then that we're able to modify that as we
because,
move along.
our choices are pass an ordinance, ban them, or have no regulation of them at all. So we could go ahead and pass something basic, and then, if there are 10 people that get injured because of people riding these on sidewalks or something, then at any point, it could be reconsidered, right?
That's a good point, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead, I move we approve ordinance number G 1300.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance passes. Fine.
Thank you, James.
Good job, James. Way to hang in there.
Birthing a baby.
Non-agenda reports and requests. Bi-monthly budget review. Director of Finance Jamie Clarkson will provide the October 31st, 2019 bi-monthly budget review.
I think we just got James an A.
Good evening. Mayor, Commissioners, this is a budget review for August 31st of this year. It's 10 months of the year, budget year has passed, which is approximately 83% of the year. I don't see anything really out of line or that I didn't anticipate. The general fund is 88% on revenues as of the end of October of the budgeted or estimated revenues for the year, and 80% expenditures. Some of these might be a little bit less than 83% on the revenue, like the special alcohol and drug and the special parks and recreation. Those are the state issued funds every quarter, or not every, they call it quarter funds, but it takes like a quarter and a half before you actually get the money from the state. So I'll have one more distribution on them, then that'll push us close to about 100% for the year. I won't get that until December, those funds until December. The utility fund, it's doing well. It's like 85.5% revenues and about 81.5% expenditures at this time. So I don't see any issues there. The utility fund and the general fund are our two big operating funds, so I always keep a real close eye on those especially. Overall, we started the year with 13.4 million. At the end of October, we got 15.5 million. That will decline in November and in December because I don't have any more big distributions of money coming, but we still got ongoing expenses for the last 2 months of the year. So, anybody got any questions on any of this?
Looks good to me.
Could you talk a little bit about sales tax collections?
Oh yeah, good point. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah.
Sales tax. October of 2019 compared to October of 2018 is at 4.42%, which is wow. And this year's it's been a really good year. Have had 10 months in a row of some kind of positive growth on sales tax collections. In prior years, it's kind of been the roller coaster. It'd go up and go down and go up and go down. So I hope we finish the year on a strong note there. So far, it's been up this year, pretty good.
That's terrific.
Great.
That's the biggest number we've had
Yeah,
this year.
biggest number I've ever seen,
Yeah.
so. It's a sign of a good economy, so.
Hey, Jamie, the only number that jumps out in here is the red 593,000 for street and highway sales tax. Can you run through
Yeah,
why
street,
it looks like that?
the street and highway sales tax, it just shows we've spent almost 600,000 more than we've taken in for the year. But that's due to last year, we had to put money aside to pay for North and South Broadways milling and repaving because we didn't have that much money. It was $1 million project, so we had to kind of put some aside at the end of last year to roll over into this year. So, but I budgeted for that, so I allowed for that because it says the budgets, we've spent about 85% of the street sales tax that was budgeted for this year, but going into November and December, we won't be doing a lot of paving with the weather changing, so, because it's a cyclical thing. It's like April through about the middle of November, and then we're about done for the year, so.
Thanks. Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Jamie.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate all your work, keeping us up to date on this. Executive session.
Well, before we go into that, it sounded like everybody is pretty in favor of that non-discrimination ordinance. Can we get that on the agenda next meeting? Unless there are any objections?
I think what I would like to see is what's the practical application for us? I mean, what does that mean in terms of, government
Regulations?
yeah. I
Putting
mean,
it on the agenda or having the ordinance?
having the ordinance.
Well, I think,
I mean, that's part of the discussion I would like to know is
so,
what's if we have an ordinance, what's our role in enforcing? So,
yeah, but that's three, I mean, do you want me to start answering questions? or you
no,
want to keep
that's
adding?
part of the discussion.
This is a hard one to answer. I would say,
Oh, we are at non-agenda items, actually.
I would say the first thing about having the ordinance in place, you know, it shows a level of support for a part of our community, period. So, everything else aside, whatever your politics are, whatever you believe, that's what's been approved in numerous Johnson County communities and Lawrence. Lawrence said they have had this on the books for 5 years. I think they've only had one instance where somebody actually used it. Practically speaking, not having an ordinance in front of me, I've read the Overland Park ordinance, which is basically the standard for the Johnson County communities, and the reason I was drawn there is because that's where there's the most of them that have recently passed. Yeah, I mean, the city basically would be in a position where we could become a body for somebody that had a complaint against an employer or somebody for various reasons. There would be a place for them to come.
Would that be a role for our, do we have a human resource commission or something? Do we have?
That,
There's one on the books, I think.
that would be a role, well, let's back up.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm
this is
not-
a big ordinance, so
Right.
the idea that this is gonna be on the agenda in 2 weeks is asking a lot. A draft of an ordinance could be on an agenda in 2 weeks, but I think as you can tell today, there's gonna be some input on what goes into an ordinance. If you, the five of you, or the next five are gonna have to come to consensus on what's in there. So I think the expectation should be, you need to decide if you wanna handle it, and if you want us to draft something, we can, and we'll take our best, stab at doing that. But when you do it, and knowing that you have a new commission coming on, it's not going, I don't see any way this commission gets through that before I hand off to a new commission. So personally, my recommendation would be, yes, we should consider it, we can draft whatever, but you need to think about the timing of, and the likelihood that we're gonna need as much input from the people that have asked for the ordinance, rather than just thinking I can whip one out with staff and Henry's help, and it's gonna meet our needs, because we are not a Johnson County community, we're not Lawrence, we're Pittsburgh, Kansas, and I think there's a lot of people here that who want to have an input on it, so.
Right.
I
I
hope
mean,
that wasn't.
it took us 4 meetings for dockless vehicles, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah.
This will be,
Well, my point was, I don't wanna have something in place that's paper only. I mean, if we're gonna draft something, you know, it needs to be meaningful and needs to be something that we can play a part in or enforce or whatever the word you choose.
Understood that.
But we do have an ordinance dealing with certain areas of discrimination already. Like I said, I'd like to see that be part of the ordinance, and I think we all do, that's included, everything's included that's on here, plus you guys be included in this ordinance.
So just amend the current one to include what they're asking for.
That's what I would think,
And that
but
would
you
start
know,
as a
that's
draft.
But what was the year on that?
Well, I mean, it's still on the books, it hasn't
Yeah.
been replaced, and
I mean,
I don't know why we haven't
Probably a
even
nice
looked
time
at it
just
since
to,
1991.
yeah.
look at what the big cities have done, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Do you need anything from us to
The
go forward?
easiest thing to do would be to distribute to the 5 of you the draft ordinance, as Johnson County submitted it, the one that they passed, and then the one that's amended the way that Chuck is recommending, and then you guys can take off from there and have the discussion at the next meeting about whether you want to move forward or wait and pass it on to the new commission, whatever you want. We can easily do that.
Okay.
Okay. And we want to make sure we say thank you for everybody coming in, because I know there were some calls to our office about, concern for safety, and you're in a safe place. And we take it very serious, so thanks for coming up.
Under non-agenda
I have a
items,
comment before we get to the next section. I just want to say that I think where we're at on this amendment or addition to our agenda was very highly unethical, in my opinion. We get an agenda on Friday. Nothing was on there about this executive session. There was plenty of time to have that on there. Nothing was put on the agenda Friday. I get an email from Henry Monday when I'm on the school bus, sending us information about performance evaluation, goals, and things that were met. I got that, like I said, on the school bus. I don't look at my phone or look at an email until 4:30 when I get off the bus. I had to be out of town last night. I looked at that at 4:30. There was nothing on there that said there's a time frame that this has to be done. No deadline. Today at 3 o'clock, I'm back on the school bus. Guess what? I get an email that says we've added this to the agenda. Don't have time to read it till 4:30, and the meeting starts at 5:30. I have no time whatsoever to go over a performance evaluation. In the past, we've had plenty of time before that happened. We were given this ahead of time. We had time to fill this evaluation out, study it, and do the best we can on an evaluation. So my question is, why? We had an election Tuesday. So Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, this all could have been sent to us. Hey, we're gonna do this evaluation. This is a time that we can have to do it. This is a deadline. I think the election showed that the citizens are concerned with the lack of transparency. And in my opinion, this is how this was done, a lack of transparency. There was no reason that we didn't know on the packet we were given Friday or anywhere before then that this would be on the agenda for tonight. So I did not fill out anything on the evaluation. I just think it's highly unethical that we did it this way, and what's the rush? I think the city manager's contract's up at the end of December. Now, I understand with the new commission coming on and the old one going off, there might be some issues, but I just do not understand the lack of transparency in how this was handled.
one thing I'll tell you, we have always done the evaluation before the new commission comes on, because they haven't been
I understand that.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you do understand that.
You don't have to
and
school
we-
me on what I understand.
Well,
good.
there's also other people in the room that might want to know what the process is.
Sure, I'd like to know how we got here.
And this is how we've always done it. We've always done it before the new commission comes aboard. And I think there's nothing underhanded, or all you're going to hear tonight, as far as I'm aware, is the report that Darren has to give us. We don't have to turn in our evaluations tonight. Our evaluations can be turned in later. I don't know when Henry's supposed to send these things to you. You're on the bus, he's at the office. You know, there's a lot of time after you get home to study these things, just like I did. And I don't think there's a thing underhanded.
I didn't say underhanded, I said highly unethical.
You may not have used that word, but you certainly implied it.
Well, Patrick, thank you for trying to educate me on this. I still ask the question, why weren't we notified before today at 3 o'clock?
Probably because I thought we were going to have an issue getting all of this work done in the short time that we have before the new commission comes on. And to go with that, I think that a meeting ago, we changed when the new commission comes on board. I think it makes it very hard to get everything done. As you know, we oftentimes postpone putting things on the agenda right before election time. And we need time to finish our work before the new group comes on. And I'm suggesting that we revisit this installation date of our new commissioners, start at a nice, clean first of the year. When our first meeting is of the year, that's when they come on board. That way, these people who are leaving will have their full year's service time. And I think it will make all of this process much more understandable for everything. And it will work for our new commission this way too.
Well, I'm glad we have 5 different commissioners, because we have 5 different sets of opinion, but we can come together as a group. And I take it that this was your thoughts, we were going to do this tonight. That wasn't my thoughts. So I guess we will do this and go from there.
So let's go back to the unethical.
Sure, I figured you'd ask me about that.
And transparency, because the other piece that maybe is not transparent is when one of us tries to do a motion before the consent agenda. So, and you've done that a couple times, and for me, that's a lack of transparency, because we don't let our community know that action's being taken. So maybe at some point, when we get the new group on, we can just talk about what's transparent and what we need to do going forward.
I would look forward to having that conversation, Dawn. Thank you very much.
I brought up this idea about reevaluating the motion that we passed last commission meeting about the installation date. Does anyone else have any ideas about that?
What was that again?
As opposed to installing the new commission, but in next
In December.
in December, we do it the very first meeting in January. That way it's a clean, you know, they do it from year to year, and it's not,
I don't know. I think the people that got elected would not want that changed. I mean, that's what we voted to do, so I would be opposed to that. But why don't we ask them?
why would we ask them? We're the ones who are running this show.
Because
right
they got
now.
elected and they knew that's when they were going to be seated, and now we're gonna change
Well, I think some of them
something else.
didn't know when they were gonna be seated in actuality.
Yeah,
In
we messed up.
Well, what was the December 10th vote on then?
That's
So
what I'm
the
saying.
other option, in order to give this commission, to fulfill their responsibility for the evaluation of the city manager, is that we'll need a special meeting next week for executive session only. So that the individuals that worked with the city manager this year can fulfill their duty in terms of completing the evaluation.
I think that sounds like a good idea.
Okay.
For me, to answer your question, Patrick, I feel that I've already voted when the new commissioners would be seated, and I probably would support maintaining that.
Thank you, Dan.
That would be my opinion.
Okay, it's okay. That's the way you feel?
So then a special meeting.
So then we'll have to have a special meeting. When is that going to be?
How about next Tuesday?
How about next Tuesday?
I'm
Since
not
we
in
have a
town.
meeting.
When you tell us.
Well, we don't have to have, I mean, what's the meeting for?
To do this evaluation?
Oh, so you have to be here for that naturally, so.
Well,
What's Monday look like?
I'm gone from Wednesday on. I'll be back to town on Wednesday.
I can't do it Wednesday.
What about Thursday night?
I can do it Thursday.
What time?
The earlier the better.
Any's fine with me.
5:30.
Okay.
So we'll have a special meeting, executive session, 5:30, Thursday. That date is the 21st. Do we need to vote on that?
Please, yes.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Any other non-agenda reports or requests?
Nope, not from staff.
Going. Okay. We'll move into executive session. An executive session is necessary to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel pursuant to KSA 75-4319B1 to discuss the 2019 work performance and achievements of the city manager. Looking for a motion?
So move.
Second? I second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Executive session for 45 minutes.
Oh, okay, yeah, well, you're learning, Dan.
No, votes were taken, no decisions made. Is that all I need to say?
You're back from executive session.
And we're back from executive session.
And make a motion to adjourn. Second.
Been moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Someday.
Yeah. You're gonna be outvoted too, sister.